It's the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast. All right, girl, we are having conversations about everything pertaining to being a wife, mom, boss in the kingdom. So, the things you need to hear, the things you're afraid to say, the things you think you are alone on, we are having those conversations right here. So, we enjoy having conversations with those women that are willing to come on and pour out into our community. Why don't you take a listen at this next clip from our next episode of the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast? See you later.
There are 13 different types of intimacy we can experience in marriage. Sex is only one of them. Sex is supposed to be the celebration of intimacy that you have established before you ever get to the bedroom. Now, I know that some of y'all have been taught that men need sex in order to feel emotionally intimate. So you have to give him sex so that he will emotionally connect to you. That is unbiblical and backwards. Because if you go to the Song of Solomon, you will see that Solomon emotionally connected with the Shulamite woman before they had sex. That is the biblical setup. Okay, we've got that out of the way.
For us to see, you know, do we really love each other?
She was a wise woman.
You don't know what you don't know, right? So once you're exposed to something new, you're like, wow, this is how it's supposed to.
I don't know what to do. He will, of course, cover me in prayer. I have done things my own way, very erroneous.
I mean, when I tell you endured,
It was just the overflow of every emotion.
The word widow, I completely despise.
Has tainted this area of sex so much.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast. I am here with a special guest. Her name is Angela. Angela, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the community?
Hi, I'm Angela, the Christian Sexpert. I talk all things sex and intimacy in Christian marriage.
Yes, I absolutely love it. So I actually wanted to read your profile because I think that your profile is amazing. Can you see me?
Yes.
Just want to make sure you can still see me because I had to click off to get to your profile. And so it just says that you spent your teenage years trying to fill the God-shaped hole that exists within us. And you looked to other things outside of God, essentially. And then you had a Damascus Road experience as a sophomore in college where God ripped the scales off of your eyes and you really began to see Jesus and you started teaching people about sex and you started um just really following his instruction. And you wanted to do this for a job and God allowed you to be able to do this for your job. And so I want to know, what was the thing that made you be like, I have to teach other people?
So I've always, so I graduated a million years ago. I graduated college with my degree in religion and psychology. And I was fascinated at the time with human sexuality. But at the time, a million years ago, good girls from small towns didn't go to school to become sex coaches. Um, they went to school to get their MRS degree. So, being a good girl from a small town, I just a couple weeks after graduation got married, that's the MRS if you didn't go to a small Christian school and get the reference. Um,
I
but
didn't. What is MRS? Mrs.
MR,
I got you.
yeah, yeah,
It took me
that's
a
the
second.
joke. That's the joke at small Christian colleges. That girls
Gotcha.
are there for their MRS degrees.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so but I remained fascinated with human sexuality and theology and studied everything I could get my hands on. And after I had my son, I joined an international online women's ministry. And I was eventually asked to join the leadership team for the ministry because of the wisdom that I brought to conversations about sex and marriage. And the leaders, very long story short, the leaders were all talking one night, and I was like, I can see myself doing this when my kids don't need me so much anymore, when they're a little older, because I see the damage that purity culture has done to marriages. I see the damage that the obligation sex message has done to marriages. And I know that God offers us abundance in all areas of our lives, and that includes our sex life. And women should be having fantastic sex. Like, we are the multi-orgasmic creatures. We should be orgasming every single time, but we have this massive orgasm gap in our country where, men orgasm over 90% of the time during an encounter with their wife, but women are orgasming less than 50% of the time. And it was like, it doesn't make sense. The math doesn't math. And kind of on a whim, started my TikTok platform. And I have raging ADHD and kind of thought that like I would stick with it for maybe a week and that would be it. But God was like, no, this is for real. This is serious. Like that whole like you want to be part of the solution isn't a later dream, it's a now thing. And my account blew up. Literally, I started my account in late January. I had gone viral with a video at over 5 million views by Easter of that year. And God, every step of the way was like, okay, here's the next thing. Okay, here's the next thing. Okay. And I'm going, okay, cool, okay.
Oh gosh, if you're not saying yes with fear in your heart, then is it really God's plan?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a lot of information to unpack. You talked some
Yeah.
about purity culture, and I
Mhm.
don't remember what was the other one that you said.
Obligation sex messaging.
Obligations, text messages. Okay, so here is where I thought that having you on the Keen Wife Mom Boss community could be very helpful in healing to a Keen Wife Mom Boss. There are a lot of women who get married and are unsure about how to approach having intimacy and sex in their marriage with their spouse, whether it is from childhood trauma or the environment that has forced like a certain thought process with them as far as like sex. And so I know that there are a lot of women out there, but I also know that those women are probably ashamed and don't want to have conversations about it. And so the question is, what have you found to be the hardest thing to overcome in these different types of cultures that you say are putting a hardship on the wife or on the woman for sex or intimacy in a marriage?
Bad theology, 100%. If you are in a church, because I literally get sent sermons on a regular basis where these pastors are standing up and misrepresenting scripture with their whole chest in front of their congregation and putting it on the internet and thinking that they should be proud of it. Um, I can give you multiple links to sermons like this where a pastor will stand up and he will say, wives, I know that you don't want to hear this, but 1 Corinthians 7:5 means that if your husband wants to have sex, that you need to have sex with him. You can't say no to him. And if that pastor wants to seem like he's a little bit enlightened or like a little bit trauma informed, he'll be like, no, obviously you can say no sometimes, but you can't say no all the time. And you have to make sure that you're having sex with him because if you don't, what's he gonna do? God created men with a need for sex that you're never going to understand. He'll start using pornography, or if he cheats on you, I'm going to ask, how often were you having sex and meeting his needs? Like, there's so much, and that's all based on a incorrect interpretation of 1 Corinthians 7:5. And it infuriates me. I don't even know which way to take this rant right now because I'm like, we can talk about the lack of exegesis in modern American evangelicalism and how even pastors have a lack of biblical education in order to look at the Bible in its proper historical and cultural context. We can talk about how that man is basically advocating rape from the pulpit and therefore creating a culture in which a woman feels obligated to have sex with her husband, who this woman is going to walk out of that sermon and believe that if her husband sins sexually, it's her fault, that she should have been more available to him, right? And that culture that pastor is creating from the pulpit, she's not going to have anybody to turn to. She's not going to have any safe people that she can ask questions and say, is this right? Is this okay? My skin crawls when my husband touches me, but do I still have to say yes anyway, even though I feel repulsed? Because in that church, they're all sitting under the same bad theology. And she's not going to have anyone safe to tell her, no, sex is supposed to be, the biblical design of sex is mutual pleasure. And so if it is not mutually pleasurable, it's not biblical sexuality, right? Because from the top down, the scriptures have been twisted and weaponized against her.
Yeah, that's I can't imagine the frustration that comes from working with some of your clients. Like not for, not with the
Yeah,
clients,
yeah, yeah.
just for what's been poured into them. Because
Oh, yeah.
if there's something missing, and maybe I'll just speak for me. If there's something missing to where I don't want to be intimate with my husband, it's probably because we have some deeper rooted issues to where I'm not feeling him. So to put that weight on the woman instead of asking the man how he's leading his wife or how he's pouring into his household or how the intimacy and the communication and the relationship is going, it is diabolical.
It's crazy work. It's crazy work. Because here's one of the pillars of my work. Healthy women in safe marriages. In safe marriages.
You can say it a third time.
Do not do not turn down good sex for no reason. If the sex is bad, no wonder she doesn't want to have sex with you. If she's not orgasming on a consistent basis, it's no wonder she doesn't want to have sex. And if she believes that you as a man are entitled to use her body to masturbate yourself, that's not a safe marriage.
Woo, that was a little. So I'm just going to put this in terms. So you feel like that is essentially what a man is doing when he's having sex with a woman who is not orgasming and doesn't even want sex.
But think about it. So if she doesn't want sex, if she is not orgasming, what other description is there? But he's using her body to masturbate. If she's not orgasming, that's not mutual pleasure. If she's not enjoying it.
That's true. So what would you say to a wife who feels like, um, okay, because I feel like we have a different scenario of many wives here. What would you say to a wife who felt like it was her obligation to make sure that she gave her body to her husband, but she didn't mind doing it, even if she didn't really enjoy it? And or versus a wife who felt like she had to give her body to her husband and she hated it, and like you said, it made her skin crawl.
Okay, so there's actually a third level to this equation as well.
Mhm.
So at the bottom level, you have the wife who is repulsed by his touch, but still feels like, because she's been told, well, you have to love him sacrificially, and he doesn't want to go to work and use his body to bring home a paycheck so you can stay home and homeschool the kids. So, you have to love him sacrificially, right? So her skin crawls, but she believes that, again, another twisted scripture that's not biblical, that she has to sacrifice her body to allow him to use her body, right? There's the wife who feels obligated to let him use her body, but she right now doesn't necessarily mind. And then the third level is where you start to, this is I don't know, this might get a little kinky for you. But you start to move into a kink area where you have couples that have both said, the thought of never saying no turns me on. Right. And so like it's a turn on for him to just grab her and be like, let's go. So like in a way, she kind of enjoys it. And so there's multiple, like it's a whole spectrum, right? And for the woman, to your question, for the woman who's sitting in the middle of, I don't necessarily mind it, you don't necessarily mind it today. But what's going to happen in a year? What's going to happen in 5 years? What's going to happen when you've had 3 more kids? What's going to happen when your body starts to age and hormones start to change the physical composition of your sex organs? You might not mind it today, but that doesn't mean it's setting you up for the healthiest relationship that you can have in another year. in another 5 years because it's harder to change things once you've made them a habit. So if you've made them a habit of, I don't really like this, but okay, and you've made it a habit for the first 5 years of your marriage, it's going to be harder to change that habit once it does start to bother you. And statistically speaking, it's going to start to bother you.
So what is the advice that you would give her to be able to have that conversation with her husband? And I find it, let me also say this, I find it very insane if a husband doesn't realize that. And he's probably very narcissistic if you don't
So
realize.
there's a couple of things here, right? So the first is it's really easy to demonize men in that sort of situation. Like, how can he not care about her pleasure? And believe me, like, it's what I do on the internet a lot. Like, literally, the video I posted before I hopped on to record with you.
Oh, you froze.
In fact, the video that I posted right before I hopped on this call with you was a man saying the quiet part out loud. He literally was like, I don't care if she ever orgasms. You're punishing me if I can't orgasm every time, right? That's like basically what he said. And so it's easy to vilify that sort of man. But then you have the man who grew up in a conservative Christian household in the sort of church environment that we talked about, where they're preaching obligation sex messaging, right? And so he might not know any better. He might simply have a lack of education. And so it depends on what the man does when he is presented with actual correct theology that says sex is supposed to be mutually pleasurable. If he rejects that and says, well, no, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible in plain English says you cannot deprive me. Side note, the Bible was not written in English, and to think that you can read it in English and have a full, comprehensive understanding of the words, and the reason the specific words were chosen is flat out ignorant. It's another language. You have to understand the culture and the language that was being used to have a full understanding of Scripture. I will
I
always
got into
stand on
Holy
that
Spirit
soapbox.
always.
Always stand on that soapbox. All right. So if he just rejects that opportunity to say, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that we were doing this wrong. I had no idea that you weren't enjoying it as much as I am. I want to fix this." That's a completely different man than the man that says you're sinning if you don't have sex with me, right? And so I don't know what sort of man everybody's married to. I don't know. So there's a few things, but to get to your question, like, what does a woman do? There's a few things. You can go to my content and you can start sending him all the reels and posts that I post. That's it's a great tool because I talk about obligation. So you can search the hashtags obligation sex, orgasm gap, marital coercion, and hashtag the Christian Sexpert. And that will pull up all the videos that I have talked about on these sort of issues. All of those are great hashtags to search. Another thing is I offer private coaching. So you can schedule a coaching session and you can with me and frame it as, hey, I love being intimate with you. I love having sex with you. I just feel like it could be even better. And so I found this coach and, don't worry, we don't have to spend 10 weeks talking about your childhood feelings, because I want to equip my clients to walk out of each and every session with actionable items that they can start implementing tonight. And we are for a long time, we were a single income homeschooling household. So I'm like, my advice is never going to be like, go away for a weekend and spend $500 on a spa day. Who has that time or money or babysitters? I don't, that's dumb. I don't know why coaches tell couples that, because my thing is intimacy isn't built on date nights, and that's a whole other rant. Okay. So, and two, for this wife, the other thing is, I really recommend sex journaling. And so I do have a guided sex journal, but you don't have to use mine. You can get a regular journal. But this one is great. My sex journal is great because it has prompts. And so you go through, you pick a prompt, you write your answer, you allow him to respond. Like don't like stare into his soul when he reads it. Like don't be weird. Don't be weird about it. Give him privacy and let him excuse me, rate his own response. But for some people, especially if you have a lot of shame surrounding this, it can feel really challenging to verbally speak about it. And so that's why I like using a tool like a sex journal, because then you don't have to verbalize and it feels a lot less intimidating. And it gives you language and structure to start having those conversations.
That's really good information, or good information to give the wife that is possibly looking for a way to have that conversation with her husband, because I'm sure that is not a very easy conversation to have, especially if you feel like you're going to let your husband down, or make him feel like he's not wanted. And I think the big deal there is a lot of men have some sort of insecurity where a wife telling them that they don't want to have sex makes them feel rejection and not wanted. And
So
that's a
that
totally different conversation on its own, because that man needs to go and get some,
therapy.
yeah.
Well, okay, so we have this whole thing in modern American evangelicalism where feelings are for women. Men feeling Women are emotional, men are logical. Who's going to tell them that anger is an emotion?
I,
Side note,
I feel
uh
like now there are a lot of men who are trying to come out of the
yes,
suppression of
thankfully.
feelings. And
Right.
I am incredibly grateful for that, because I feel like we went through a period of time where it was considered weak for a man to express his feelings, or for him to say,
Yes.
hey, you're hurting my feelings, or I'm feeling this way, or to even show care and concern for what the woman was really going through. So
Right.
thank you, mamas,
Yes.
for letting those babies
We
have some
love,
emotion.
yeah, we love a little boy who's allowed to cry, right?
Right.
But so here's the thing. They were socialized to believe that emotions are a woman's thing. But then they were also taught to wrap up their entire identity in their sexual performance. So their
Facts.
ego and their identity is wrapped up in their sexual performance. And so now, if any sort of thing, quote, threatens that performance, they don't know what to do with themselves because they lack any sort of framework to experience emotions. Because further, they sex when we have sex, when we have an orgasm, it creates a good soup in your brain of chemical cocktail, dopamine, oxytocin, all of the bonding chemicals that are released when you have an orgasm. So now he has physically trained his body and his brain to be dependent on that chemical cocktail so that he can feel authentically connected to you without ever having to do the actual emotional labor of authentic connection.
That's really good. That's really, really
And
good.
so, what is intimacy? Into me, you see. That is
Ooh, I like the way you
terrifying.
put that. Uh-huh.
That is terrifying to a man whose identity is wrapped up in his sexual performance because it opens up the possibility for you to reject his inner self. And so, of course, he's going to want to continue to just experience orgasms without anything changing, without having to make any other sort of emotional investment. Because if it has to change, there's a potential that you won't like his real inner authentic self and you will reject him. Versus if things just stay the same and he keeps getting to have the orgasms, he gets that steady feed of happy cocktails and he doesn't ever have to go any deeper. And so it's really doing everyone involved a disservice.
So let's talk about the spiritual aspect of this. Let's talk about, I don't know if you know that I
Mhm.
am a coach who work with kingdom wives who are in spiritual warfare in their kingdom marriage. And I know that some of these wives have complications in the sex department, of course. But let's talk about what you see when you're working with these women as far as like any evil spirits or demonic spirits or witchcraft spirits or warfare spirits that are behind the movement of dividing the husband and the wife in the bedroom.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Pornography is a huge issue. Pornography is a huge, massive issue when it comes to this. Um, I mean, you you said warfare, and like I had mentioned before, we hopped on, but I have received death threats to my house because of the work that I do. And if that's not spiritual warfare, I don't know what is.
Right.
So, but pornography, people do not realize how deeply pornography runs in our culture.
Mhm.
And it's so much more than just being like, well, my husband doesn't look at pornography. He's never been on OnlyFans. You can still have a pornified mindset without ever having looked at pornography.
Social media is so naked, it makes absolutely no sense. It's just literally right there on your phone. All you have to do is scroll.
And I'm not even talking about Instagram girls. I am talking about a mindset.
Facts.
Because it doesn't, like, he could have the cleanest cell phone in the history of cell phones. Like, look, nobody look at my cell phone or my search history because you would think that I am not a Christian, but look, it is part of my job to, and I stumble into things and I'm like, oh, don't want that. Get out, right? Immediately because I'm trying to do research and my algorithm doesn't know what to do with me. And that's a whole other story, right? I'm a Christian, but I talk about dildos. What's an algorithm to do? They don't know.
Oh gosh, Angela.
Are you having regrets right now?
No, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get some hate mail after this, but I don't care. It's a conversation that has to be had.
Let's talk about a pornified mindset. All right, we'll move back into safer territory away from dildos. All right, let's talk about it. Your husband can have the cleanest cell phone internet history on the planet, and he can still have a pornified mindset. Okay, Angela, what is a pornified mindset? A pornified mindset is someone who views sex as a commodity. He views it's a sense of entitlement. And so women can have pornified mindsets too. That's the thing. A woman can absolutely have a pornified mindset just as much as her husband. And so it's when an individual sees sex as something they are entitled to, something that they are owed, something that, well, I am married to you, so you have to do this. I can't go to get this from anybody else. You're the only person I can get this from. I have had men tell their wives, well, you should do boudoir photos for me, or you should let me take photos or videos when we're together. That way I won't have to use pornography. Right? And that wife thinks she's doing a good thing. She thinks she's helping her husband. Your husband doesn't need to be looking at any photos or videos, period. That's not a need at all. And if he
That
is
sounds
ever
like a relationship where the man wants the woman to be her savior or be his savior.
right,
And the only thing
right,
that helps that is looking to God.
exactly. And so if your husband has ever said, if you would just give me photos, I wouldn't have to use pornography. He has a pornified mindset, 100%. And so that is how, like, and all of that is demonic influences, right? And so that is, and it can't, and I want to clarify because my background is in psychology, that I do think that we can swing too far in the other direction and blame everything on Satan and give Satan more power than he actually has when something is like a purely psychological mental issue, because there's two facets to pornography addiction. One is the spiritual side, but one is also the psychological side. And Christians fear certain sects of Christianity, fear psychology. And you're like, oh, that's just Satan's work and you just need Jesus. Yeah, I need Jesus and my therapist, okay? I need Jesus and my therapist.
Okay, wait. So I'm
And
going to pause here for a second because I love the last thing you said. I need Jesus and my therapist. I do think a lot of the things that are classified as psychological are actually spiritual, but I believe that you have to have therapy because you're not going to receive the spiritual until you get through the psychological.
and so here's the thing. Addiction is a maladaptive coping mechanism. Most people fall in, and it doesn't matter what sort of addiction we're talking about, whether it's pornography or cigarettes or drugs or shopping or food. Any addiction is a maladaptive coping mechanism. It all started with, ooh, bad feelings, yucky. I was never allowed to cry. I was shamed for having feelings. I
Which
was
is the
told I was
door.
too much. Right. Those are all the open doors. Right. And so I need something. I don't know how to process this yucky feeling. I don't know how to exist. I want it to go away because ew. And so I'm going to do something that's going to make the yucky feeling go away. So I'm going to look at pornography. I'm going to eat some, the entire bag of chocolate. I'm going to go on Amazon and buy something. Oh,
Which
it's only
becomes the
$5
seed.
here.
Yeah.
Right. And so now your brain has made the connection. Yucky feeling, this makes it go away. And then I feel good for a little while afterwards. But then the cycle starts all over again. You get another yucky feeling. You need to make it go away. And you feel good for a little while, but then you need a little more to make the yucky feeling go away. Or then you start to realize, oh, I shouldn't be looking at this. Oh, I shouldn't be spending this money. Oh, I shouldn't be eating this thing. And now you start to feel guilty, which is what? A yucky feeling. And so you need to make it go away. And so you cannot just take away the thing that you've been doing to make the yuckies go away and think that that's just going to be it. You can't
So
just
that's where the
stop.
therapy comes in because you got to get to
Yes.
the root cause of why. And
You
the
have
root
to
cause of
identify the root,
why, yeah. Go
but
ahead.
you also need to replace it with, because if addiction is a maladaptive coping mechanism, you need to replace it with a healthy coping mechanism. You can't just take something away and think nothing's going to come in to fill that hole that was left. And so therapy is going to give you healthy coping mechanisms so that you can start to build up a tolerance to experience the yucky feelings that are going to come.
It sounds a lot, and I'm just saying, it sounds a lot like correct deliverance. And the reason why I say correct deliverance because there are people
Mhm.
who go through deliverance, but they never are filled with anything. They don't take in the word, they don't shift their environment or shift their habits or shift their mindset. And so the thing is initially taken away, but there's still an emptiness there. And so
Mhm.
where scripture says that the demon goes out and he roams the land and he can't find a place to be. And so he goes back to his home or where he was and he finds it swept and clean. And so he brings even more demons in with him. I always reference that scripture when it comes to stuff like that. I have been to therapy and I've taken a couple of classes, but I did not graduate with my psychology degree. And so I do see in the church where maybe therapy is getting a little bit bigger. Like maybe it's not such a curse word anymore, but I think there was such a period of time there where going to therapy felt like it was a bad thing. Like it felt like, oh, you're a crazy person if you go to therapy. Jesus in therapy. That's why I said I love the last thing that you said, because a lot of the times we're going to therapy and we're not being filled with anything. Like we're just going to therapy. And these are things that we like habits and disgusting, icky feelings, like you said, that we really need to give to God. And because we don't know God and because we're not taking his word or having a relationship with him, we're just constantly going to therapy, but there's never really any healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, man, I agree with that. And I feel like we're just in a world where, okay, so me and my husband talk about this all the time because people feel like where you're a young boy, the introduction of sex comes in because you're around your peers and they're all talking about all these girls and they're talking about all these things. And so we read this article about this guy, or maybe it was a post, and he was saying that he was a virgin until he was like 18 and his friends were picking on him. And he felt like, oh, he was supposed to go and have sex.
Mhm.
He wasn't supposed to remain a virgin. And that does become an open door to pornography. It becomes the open door to like heavily desiring sex. It becomes the open door to just a lot of sexual immorality, essentially, is what it is. But there is this part of our culture, and I mean, like our world, where you're expected to have sex at this very young age. And I think even sometimes bringing that into a marriage is damaging for a wife. And there are conversations that she doesn't really want to have. But I know that you have to encourage these women to have these conversations with their husband. How often do you come across a marriage for a wife who has had some childhood trauma concerning marriage, maybe molestation or just some things that she just necessarily doesn't want to talk about, and it's kind of hindering her sex, and you have to prepare her to talk to her husband about it? Or do you encourage her to talk to her husband about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see these things almost every day, but also, I mean, it's just statistically, um, more women have been sexually assaulted than have not been sexually assaulted. So statistically, like it would be odd for me to not encounter this on an almost daily basis, right? And the thing is, like, it can, when you hear us encouraging you to talk to your husband about this, we're not telling you to give him every gory detail of everything that has ever happened to you. We are talking, you give him a high level rundown of, hey, I was touched inappropriately when I was a kid, or hey, I was drugged and date raped, or hey, my youth pastor groomed me and started molesting me. Like, he doesn't need details, but it's unfair to enter a sexual relationship with someone without being aware of their boundaries and triggers. Now, to be fair, it's very likely that you will have triggers that you aren't even aware of until you guys stumble across it. But how much worse will it be if you're in the middle of having sex and you stumble across a trigger that neither of you were aware that you had, and he has no idea why you're freaking out right now at all, versus if you had given him a bare minimum of context that there might be something that happens one day where we find a trigger that I didn't even know that I had. And he goes, okay, now I have some understanding of why you're freaking out right now. Because when you're in that moment, you're certainly not going to want to explain what's happening, even less than when you're calm and well regulated. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's just like, there's a million other like dimensions and layers that we can talk about with this, but that's just like
The skin of
the
it.
like the very top level.
I got you. So I work with Kingdom Wives, like I said, to have spiritual warfare in marriage. And when you're dealing with spiritual warfare, a lot of the times God deals with you first, like period, because he has to equip you for the warfare. And I can only imagine having conversations with some of these women and telling them that, you have to heal first. You have to have conversations first. You have to go through these things first when they're experiencing bad sex in marriage, as you would say, or where they're experiencing obligation messages in their marriage. And so I'm just thinking about this wife. I'm just thinking about this wife and how hard it is to how hard it will be for her to deal with herself first before she begins to deal with the marriage. And in spiritual warfare, it is prayer and conversations to God. It is seeking God for what it is that you need to do in the marriage to make the marriage be in alignment with what it is that he has assigned for the kingdom marriage. And to deal with yourself first when you're struggling at that has to be such a hard thing to deal with. And I wonder how many wives just walk away and they're like, I'm not doing it.
For sure. But those wives usually aren't coming to me. I'm seeing the women who are wanting help and support. I'm not seeing the wives who are like, I can't do this. You mentioned praying and interceding for your marriage. And um, I don't know, maybe this might get you some more hate mail, but when here's when I talk about praying and interceding with my coaching clients, I will. I cracked my. I'm sorry. I got to get it together. Um, I will ask them, when was the last time you prayed against your gag reflex?
Elaborate. I know what you're saying, but elaborate.
Yep. So, when was the last time you prayed for the knees of your youth? When was the last time that you prayed that your husband's tongue would not grow weary in doing its good work? And when we talk about spiritual warfare for our marriage and specifically our sex life, are we praying for our sex life? Are you praying for the endurance to run the race with endurance? Are you praying for his endurance?
I've prayed some of those prayers, but not to that level, Angela. My God. Not not to that level. But I have prayed years ago some messages, some prayers over my marriage. But a lot of times in spiritual warfare, I am praying for God to reveal the things that keep us from connecting on a deeper level or an intimate level. Baby, you just went off. Just went off.
Okay, but when we look at the Song of Solomon, and this goes back to exegesis, reading the Bible in its proper historical and cultural
Uh-huh.
context.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so when we look at Song of Solomon in its historical context, it is in line with other erotic poetry of its day.
Mm-hmm.
And think about it like, if I say, what genre of music is Britney Spears? Bubblegum pop, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Bubblegum pop. Okay, Christina Aguilera, bubblegum pop, especially like the 90s stuff, right? The early works, bubblegum pop. So somebody can turn on a song by Britney Spears, and even if you have never heard it before, you're going to be able to identify that that's bubblegum pop and it's probably Britney Spears, right? Because it all sounds the same.
mm-hmm.
Song of Solomon sounds like all the other erotic poetry in the time that it was written. And people, certain Christians, certain sects of Christianity, like to hyper spiritualize Song of Solomon. And they forget that the Bible exists in a state of duality. It is two things at once. It is the inspired word of God, and it is a collection of many different genres of books. Song of Solomon is poetry, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John are gospels, right? Paul's letters are letters. They were written like it was a literal put a postage stamp on it and send it letter. Solomon didn't write a letter. He wrote erotic poetry. And yes, it's a state of duality. It is a description of Christ and the church, but it's also about Solomon's wife saying, "Come to my garden and eat its choicest fruit." And she didn't mean kumquats.
It's your facial expression for me. I'm just letting you know. So I had a
If
guest
my
on.
voice doesn't say it, my face is going
Your
to.
face definitely says it. I had a guest on last season. Her name was LaShonda, and she has a business. It's a lingerie business, and it's called Songs of Solomon. And so we had a lot of this conversation last season. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm so in agreement with what you're saying. And I think the thing that keeps us praying that other level is either shame or
Mhm.
guilt, like purity culture, what you said, and all of these things
Yes.
that make us like we're not comfortable in our skin with our sexual and intimate time with our spouses. And so
Mhm. I
I've
have
prayed.
had people like try vehemently to rebuke me when I post that sort of content online, and say that's sinful, that's defiling the word of God and blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, baby, like you are just uncomfortable with your sexuality, is what
Facts.
this is boiling down to.
I mean, I haven't listened to all of your content, so I don't know what it says, but everything that you're
No,
saying
it
is
was
true.
literally like it was like that the particular incidents I'm thinking of was literally a video saying, when was the last time you prayed against your gag reflex? When was the last time you prayed for the knees of your youth? When was the last time you prayed for his tongue to not grow weary in doing its good work? Like that's literally what the video was. And this woman made like 6 videos trying to rebuke me.
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
gosh. Oh my God. So like I said, I pray prayers. I just
yeah,
haven't gone there.
yeah.
But for
But
anybody who's
go
having issues in your
but
sex
go
life,
to the Song of Solomon
that's true. I know. I've read it. I've read it. I just
and you
never
can,
really put it in context like that, I guess, as far as
right.
the level of praying for your marriage in the sex department. I
Yes.
guess I don't want to say how bad it's going in the sex department, but how much a struggle of the sex department and what level of liberation do you want to see in the level of sex with your husband? Girl, let's get on this hate mail. Let's talk about this hate mail.
Yeah.
So you get letters to your how do people even find out where you live?
Well, because I have my business, like I have an LLC.
Hmm.
And so the papers were all filed with my home address because I didn't know that people were that crazy that they were going to like look for my home address and, you know, send me things. So if your business could even be the slightest, and also I think in my state you can't use a PO box to register your LLC.
You have
I
to
think
use
it
a
has
home
to,
address.
yeah, I think it has to be a physical address. And so yeah, that's
So
how
what did your
people
hate mail say?
um so I mean so the one um like found my like IP address and like my internet IP address and was talking and it like so here's the thing, if you are only listening to this and you like don't see the video, I'm fat. I'm a fat woman. I have always been fat. I have a mirror. And my trolls must think I don't because they think that calling me fat is an insult somehow. And I'm like, do y'all think I live in a mirrorless house? I know I'm fat. I see my body.
I
My
skipped over
husband,
that part in your your introduction of self, by the way. I
yeah,
was like, wait, what is this?
like if I weaponized it first, you can't use it against me. Also, I don't care. My husband thinks I'm hot. Okay? But this one particular hate mail was like talking about it. They had figured out my husband's profession and said things like, yeah, he's on the phone with his buddies when he's at work talking about how much he hates you and how he's got a side piece and he thinks that your body is disgusting. And I was like, no, he doesn't, definitely does not find my body disgusting. So there's that. You're high. But that one particular one, I actually had to, I decided to go and file a police report for one of the pieces I received because I was like, if this is gonna keep happening, you know, I want a record, like I want it on record already. You know, I don't want to be the people that are like, why didn't you file a police report before now? You know, so I'm like,
It's
I'm
so
just gonna file it now.
insane.
And the poor police officer that was taking the report was so confused.
Did he ask
Like
you,
imagine,
now what is this for now?
yeah,
What do you do this for a living? I was just gonna
what
say
is
it's
your
so
job? And he's like, what is
insane
your job?
that you would hate somebody so much for talking about sex that you would send them death threats and hate mail.
Because I threaten the status quo of a lot of marriages.
I get it.
My primary haters are men, with a few women who have drunk the like misogyny patriarchy Kool-Aid thrown in, but my primary hate base is males, men. And when I talk about I had posted a video where I said, hey, newlyweds, if she is struggling to learn how to orgasm, it's okay to go to your husband and say, "Hey, can we like table your orgasms for a while so that I can learn how to orgasm without any like pressure?" Right? Because she's already not orgasming. So like, can you do this to like in solidarity to like show care and concern for me? And this man commented and he's like, "Oh, you just want to punish men and sound Christian doing it." N-
The world
no.
we live in. From what you're saying, even just then, I can tell that in the assignment, of course, you have a heart to see kingdom marriages, Christian marriages healed in certain departments that nobody wants to deal with. Like everybody wants to be
Yeah.
like, we don't want no part of that. We want to be off limits with
Yeah.
that. Like, just make sure you pray and go to church and raise your kids good, but the sex part is
Yeah.
on you. So I am grateful that God called you to this assignment of making sure that wives and husband are connecting on a deeper intimacy level in the department, having sex and good sex, as you say, that
Yeah.
it good sex that it is. I commend you for your boldness and your courage to do this, because in the world that we live in, you're going to receive a lot of hate for trying to improve the covenants that God have put together. And that does just speak to the level of warfare that you're going to receive when you're doing the work of God. And so, man, ugh.
Yeah. And it always kind of makes me, I'm like, I'm literally handing you the keys to the kingdom here. I'm literally telling you, like, I am telling you that if you would do these things, your wife would want to have more sex with you. Like, in the long run, you would start having more sex if you would take your orgasms off the table for a month or two while she learned how to have her own orgasm, right? Like, in the long run, you would have more sex and better sex. But it's such selfish, self-centered, um,
Small-minded.
like taking a toddler's toy away so that you can, like, when you, like, every mother has had the experience of, you're in Target, you know, your toddler latches onto a toy and you're like, okay, like, sure, I will get it for you this time, right? And you get to the register and they lose their minds because they have to hand it over to the cashier to scan it so you can pay for it. Like, you're like, I'm gonna give it back to you in 5 seconds. Stop screaming. And that's what these men are doing, right? Like,
I love the analogy. I love that.
like, I'm literally telling you how to have more sex, and you're throwing a temper tantrum.
Yeah. That is hilarious. And when you put in a reference, that definitely makes a lot of sense. There was one wife that we did not discuss, and I know that we're going a little long on the time, but just that wife that that wife who how can I put that? Let me process that for a second. Because there are wives who desire to have sex in the bedroom, but they lack the intimacy and the connection there. And so they're just disconnected. It's not like they don't want to be there. It's not like they don't want to have sex, but they just lack an intimate connection with their spouses. And a lot of those men don't get it. Is a lot of those men don't understand that the more that you have an intimate, even a conversation, a hug, a kiss, a touch, just something, rather than just touching me and wanting to like throw me down on the bed every time we're alone together and just have sex.
Um, one of my most popular videos is talking about men who think that the boob honk is, you know, inappropriate.
Not the boob honk.
Like, they don't understand why their wife gets angry, right? Like, so that's kind of what I was thinking of when you were saying that. But so, okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to queue up the podcast to this section and you're going to have him listen to it. All right, are you ready? This is important. There are 13 different types of intimacy we can experience in marriage. Sex is only one of them. Sex is supposed to be the celebration of intimacy that you have established before you ever get to the bedroom. Now, I know that some of y'all have been taught that men need sex in order to feel emotionally intimate. So you have to give him sex so that he will emotionally connect to you. That is unbiblical and backwards. Because if you go to the Song of Solomon, you will see that Solomon emotionally connected with the Shulamite woman before they had sex. That is the biblical setup. Okay, we've got that out of the way. Now, 13 types of intimacy. Sex is supposed to be the celebration of intimacy you've established before you've ever reached the bedroom, which means you need to, when couples come to me, it's usually for libido discrepancy, where he wants sex more, she doesn't want it as often. And the first thing I'm going to ask them is, when was the last time that you had fun together? And they're going to stare at me blankly. And they're going to say, I don't know when the last date night was. And I'm going to say, that's not what I asked you. When was the last time you had fun together? And they're going to continue to stare at me blankly. And they're going to say, I don't know. When we were dating, we liked to go mountain climbing, but we can't do that with 3 kids. And I go, okay, we're going to start with recreational intimacy. Recreational intimacy, I find that in the majority of couples where sex has become a point of contention, the fun left the marriage long before the sex did. Because this harkens back to what we talked about earlier in the show with men using sex to feel connected without doing the actual work of connection, right? And so it happens a little for her too, because if she is orgasming, that chemical cocktail can carry you for a while and give you a sense of connection, but it's not an authentic or deep connection, right? And so you have to look at the other 12 intimacies. You have to intentionally work on the other 12 intimacies. And barring any other major issues in the marriage, there's no abuse, there's no addiction, there's no significant trauma from either past, there's no like, our kids have profound special needs, right? So barring other major issues, if you intentionally focus on the other 12 intimacies, your sex life is going to start taking care of itself because you will feel more connected. And so you will naturally want to celebrate that connection. Far too often, couples want to try to use sex as the thing that creates and maintains intimacy in the marriage. And it's not. It is supposed to be the celebration of intimacy in the marriage. And so the story, whatever the fancy parable, that's the word that I like to use. Look, I'm perimenopausal and I have raging ADHD. Be glad I have not struggled for a word so hard yet. It's rough out here in your 40s. Okay. The parable that I like to use is, if you are using sex to create and maintain the intimacy in your marriage, it is like building a house out of bricks. You can absolutely build a shelter out of just bricks. If you think of sex as like the bricks of the marriage, right? You can build a shelter out of bricks. It's going to be awful. I don't want to live in a house that's only built out of bricks because I like indoor plumbing. And if you're only using bricks, there's no indoor plumbing, there's no bed, and it's going to fall down the first time a storm comes because you didn't use any mortar to hold it together. So you need all 12 of the other intimacies so that you can build a fully established, well-foundational house to live in. Because also, people get married when they're young and they think their bodies are going to be young and pert and firm forever. And I've got news for you. Old age comes for us all, and she's not nice. At some point, one of your bodies is going to be sick or injured, and you're not going to be able to have sex for an extended period of time. What are you going to do then if you've been relying on sex to create and maintain the intimacy in your marriage? If she has a difficult first pregnancy and she's bedridden for the last 6 weeks of the pregnancy, then she can't have sex for at least minimum 6 weeks afterwards. Realistically, it should probably be longer for the majority of women, but that's a whole other separate episode. So you're looking at a bare minimum of 12 weeks. And that's why we wind up with these ridiculous marriage books that say, your husband's suffering, you should give him a hand. Oh, really? Because I'm leaking bodily fluids from orifices that did not previously exist in my body, and all the ones that existed before the baby exited. But he's suffering. Yes. Let me cover myself in more bodily fluids, please. That sounds delightful.
You have a serious indignation with it, which I understand.
I'm like so over these marriage books telling postpartum women to give their wives a hand. Give their husbands a hand, not their wives. That's weird. Give your husbands a hand. I words are hard, okay?
I got you, girl.
I'm super
Wait,
for
though,
marriage
where can
books.
we find these 13 levels, these 13 levels of intimacy? Is it
13 types of
types of
intimacy.
intimacy?
Yes. You can go to my website. You can get the product called 31 Days of Intimacy, where I walk you through each of the intimacies in very practical and accessible ways. You can also go on my TikTok and you can, I have a playlist of the 13 types of intimacy on my TikTok
Oh,
as well.
wow. Nice. Y'all heard that. Y'all go listen to the 13 types of because I'm interested to see what it is. You are very proficient in the level that God has given you dealing with
Girl,
this
you
type of
have to
stuff.
be. You
Yeah.
can't
Because do
sit
you
there
only
on
deal with
TikTok.
wives or married? Like, do you deal with wives separately or you only deal with husband and wife?
No, so I work with either wives on their own, or I will work with couples as well. If anybody's husband is like, I want to work with someone individually, I do have people that I can refer husbands out to if they need some solo support.
Uh-huh.
So I do, but I do work with wives and or couples.
Nice. Okay. So what in closing, is there anything that you want to share with the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss community that we have not said already?
Girl, go have good sex.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna tell you, girl, you had me like clutching my pearls a little bit. And it's funny because we don't recognize our level of uncomfortability with certain topics until we're actually having those topics. And so now I
Until
gotta
Angela
go search
busts in like
out.
the Kool-Aid man.
Oh, now I gotta go search out. Okay, what made you feel uncomfortable? Thank you so much, Angela, for having me doing the research. I appreciate that actually.
Anytime. Anytime you would like to feel uncomfortable, just hit me up. I'm sure I can come up with something else.
You are so funny. Oh my God. So tell us how we can reach you.
I am the Christian Sexpert across all platforms. And like I said earlier, you can search out hashtag the Christian Sexpert, or my website is thechristiansexpert.com.
Beautiful. All right. We're going to go ahead and close out. Thank you so much for coming by and just pouring this level of wisdom. And I'm even going to say a level of healing into the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss community that will encourage them to deal with whatever mountains they're dealing with so that they can get to the level in their marriage where they're having good sex. All right. We're going
Absolutely.
to
Thank you.
talk to you guys later and have an amazing day. Bye. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed the episode. Make sure that you catch us every week here on the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast, where we are bringing you new episodes, new content, new information, new empowerment, new strategies, and new strength. Until then, I'll catch you next time.